Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a bit of a psychological experiment, if you like. I want you to think about the thing you probably spend the last 8 hours chasing, the thing you check your banking app for, maybe with one eye closed because you're, a bit scared of the number, the thing you stress about when the bill comes at a restaurant.
We are talking about money.
We are. But here's the catch, and I want you to be honest with yourself here. How much do you actually know about how it works? And I don't just mean how do I tap my card. I mean, what is it fundamentally? Where does it come from? Why does it seem to be worth less every single year? Why does a pint of beer cost, what, £6 now when you swear it was £3 just a few years ago?
It's the classic fish and water problem, isn't it?
Exactly, it is. You ask a fish, how's the water? And the fish just looks at you and says, what on earth is water? We are swimming in money, or at least the pursuit of it, every single day of our lives. It surrounds us. It dictates where we live, what we eat, how much stress we carry around. But we rarely stop to analyze the liquid itself. And today's deep dive is built on a pretty terrifying premise. The water is poisoned.
That is a cheerful start.
Yeah.
But you're right. The premise we're exploring today from our source material is that the water, our monetary system, is fundamentally broken.
It feels that way, doesn't it? I think a lot of people feel that gnawing feeling that the game is rigged. You walk into a shop, you look at the prices, and you think, I'm working harder than ever, so why do I feel poorer?
Yeah.
Or you look at house prices, and they just seem to be sprinting away from your wages, just never to be caught again.
And the natural reaction for most of us is to blame yourself. You think, oh, I need to work harder, or I need to get a better job. But what if the problem isn't your work ethic? What if the problem is the money itself?
That is the core tension we are exploring today. We are doing a full, comprehensive, no stone left unturned deep dive into The Price of Money by Rob Dix. And I have to say, I love the background of this author because he's not some ivory tower academic drawing, supply and demand curves on a dusty blackboard.
No, not at all. Rob Dix
Yeah.
is a property investor. He's a podcaster.
Yeah.
He's someone who, like a lot of us, looked at the 2008 financial crash and then the 2020 pandemic stimulus and just thought, hang on a minute, the math just doesn't add up here. Where is all this cash coming from?
He went down the rabbit hole so he didn't have to. And what he found, and what we are going to unpack today, is that the financial world is, to use his term, rigged, but not necessarily in a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory way. It's not, a bunch of guys in a smoke-filled room laughing at us. It's rigged in a structural way.
It's a mechanical rigging. It's a system that naturally, almost mathematically, penalizes savers and rewards getters. It transfers wealth from the people to the government without anyone ever having to vote for it.
So here is the promise for this deep dive. We have a lot of ground to cover, a lot. But by the time we wrap up, we want to give you two superpowers that Rob Dix promises in the book. Superpower number one, the ability to finally understand that absolute gibberish you hear on the financial news.
Which is valuable in itself, I think. When they start talking about yield curves, quantitative easing, or base rates, you won't just tune out. You'll know exactly what levers they're pulling, and more importantly, who is getting squeezed.
And superpower number two, which is arguably way, way more important, the ability to make better decisions so you don't get left behind by this broken system. Because if you play by the old rules, the rules your parents taught you, like save your cash, put it under the mattress, you are losing.
You are guaranteed to lose.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part we really need to get to. The system is designed that way.
So before we can fix our future, we have to understand the mechanism. We have to answer the most basic question of all, what actually is money? But before we get there, give us a little context on why this is so confusing for people. Is this complexity? Is it by design?
I think it's a mix of complexity and, frankly, a lack of incentive to educate. Rob Dix quotes Henry Ford in the book, and it's a genuinely chilling quote. Ford said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning."
A revolution before tomorrow morning. That's heavy.
It is. It suggests that if you pull back the curtain, you might not like what you see. And so today, we're going to pull back that curtain. We're going to deconstruct the history of money. We're going to pinpoint the exact moment in 1971 when everything broke. We'll look at our addiction to debt, and then, crucially, give you the survival guide for this new era.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this. Section 1, the illusion of value. We need to start at the very, very beginning. Forget pounds, dollars, yen, Bitcoin. Let's go to a primitive village. Rob Dix uses this great analogy in the book. Imagine I have a vegetable patch and I grow carrots.
Noble profession.
It is. I'm the best carrot farmer in the village. and I need a haircut. My hair is getting in my eyes. I can't see the carrots. So I grab a sack of my finest orange vegetables and I head to the local barber. What's the problem here?
The problem is what economists call the coincidence of wants. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's simple. You have carrots. You want a haircut. But does the barber want carrots? Maybe he hates carrots. Maybe he's allergic. Maybe the guy who came in right before you just paid him in 500 carrots and he has enough soup to last him a month. If he doesn't want your specific item at that specific moment, the trade fails. You walk home with long hair and a heavy sack of rejected vegetables.
That's the barter trap. It's incredibly inefficient. I mean, civilization can't really advance like that. So we need a middleman, not a person, but a thing.
Exactly. And this brings us to the 3 specific jobs that money has to do. If you want to understand why our current money is broken, you have to understand what it's supposed to do. First, as we just established, it needs to be a medium of exchange. It's the thing we all agree to accept so we don't have to swap carrots for haircuts directly.
Right.
It greases the wheels of commerce.
Okay, that makes sense. Job number 2.
Job number 2 is a unit of account. This is really about pricing and creating a common language for value. Without money, you need an exchange rate for everything against everything else. So how many chickens is a haircut worth? How many carrots is the pair of shoes worth? How many shoes for a chicken? It gets complicated instantly.
It would be absolute chaos. You'd need a spreadsheet just to go and buy lunch.
You would.
Mm-hmm.
Money gives us a common denominator. We can say a haircut is 20 pounds. A bag of carrots is 1 pound. Now we can compare them instantly. We know a haircut is worth 20 bags of carrots. It simplifies the entire world.
Okay. Medium of exchange, unit of account, and job number 3.
This is the big one. This is the one to remember because, according to the book, this is where the crime is happening today. Money must be a store of value.
A store of value. Okay, break that down for us. What does that mean in practice?
Think about your carrots again. You didn't just find them on the ground. You prepared the soil, you planted the seeds, you watered them, you kept the rabbits away, you put time and energy into growing them. That is value you created. But carrots rot. You can't save that value for next year. If you put the carrots in a safe, in 6 months you just have mush.
So I need a way to freeze that effort, to preserve it.
Precisely. Money allows you to sell the carrots, get the coins, and hold on to that value. It lets you transport your hard work through time. You can work today and spend the value of that effort in 10 years when you're retired.
So if money fails at that third job, if it leaks value over time, then all the hard work I did growing those carrots is, well, it's essentially being stolen from me, slowly.
That is the crux of the argument. If you work for a week to earn 500 pounds and you save it, and in 10 years that 500 pounds only buys you a day's worth of goods, someone has stolen 4 days of your life. The numbers in your bank account might be the same, but the life, the energy stored in them, has just evaporated.
That is a terrifying thought. It completely reframes inflation. It's not just, oh, prices are going up. It's my past efforts disappearing into thin air. So historically, we figured this out, right? We use things like gold. Why do we settle on gold for so long? Why not? I don't know. Leaves?
I love the leaves example from the book. Imagine if we used oak leaves as currency.
It sounds ridiculous, but let's apply the criteria. I mean, they're portable, they're easy to count, divisible.
Sure, they tick some boxes, but they fail the most critical test of all, scarcity. If leaves were money, what would you do?
I would quit this deep dive immediately, go to the park with a rake, and become a billionaire by lunchtime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so would everyone else. The supply of money would explode. And because everyone has billions of leaves, the price of a loaf of bread would become a billion leaves. The money would be worthless almost overnight.
So for money to be a store of value, it has to be hard to get. There has to be some effort involved.
It requires what you might call proof of work. Gold became money not just because it's shiny, though that helps with recognizability, but because it is incredibly hard to find and extract. You can't just print gold. You have to dig a mine, process tons of ore, refine it. It takes real energy. That scarcity protects your time and your labor. If I pay you in gold, you know I couldn't just create it out of thin air. I had to work for it or trade something of value for it.
And this connects to the modern fascination with things like Bitcoin, right? The book touches on this briefly.
It does. And whether you love or hate crypto, you have to understand why it was created. It was an engineering response to this leaves problem. Bitcoin has a hard cap. Only 21 million coins will ever exist. It mimics the geology of gold in a digital format. It's an attempt to reintroduce scarcity into a world where governments can print infinite paper.
Okay, so we know what money should be. Scarcity is key. It needs to store value. Now, here is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, depressing. We tend to think a pound is a pound, a dollar is a dollar. It feels stable. I have a tenner in my pocket, looks the same as it did 10 years ago. But Rob Dix argues this is a total lie. Money is broken.
It is the store of value function that is completely and utterly collapsed. The book provides some staggering data on this. If you look at the British pound, since its inception, it has lost over 99% of its value.
99%. So it is effectively dead. It's gone.
It's a rounding error away from zero. And you might say, well, it's over hundreds and hundreds of years. That's not relevant.
Yeah.
But let's look at a more relatable timeline. The book uses this brilliant inheritance example.
The great-great-great-grandchild example, yeah.
Right. Imagine a wealthy ancestor in 1837, the year Queen Victoria comes to the throne. He wants to leave a legacy for you, his descendant. He takes £100. Now, in 1837, £100 was a serious amount of money. You could pay a skilled worker's wages for a year, maybe buy a small cottage. It was real wealth.
Okay, so he locks this fortune in a strongbox for me.
He locks it away. Generations pass. You open it in 2022. You see the crisp old notes, £100. You get excited. But what can you actually buy with them?
A nice dinner out for two, maybe.
Barely. In terms of purchasing power compared to 1837, that £100 now buys you about 87 pence worth of goods.
87 pence. So he left me a cottage, and I ended up with half a chocolate bar.
Basically, yes. The money sat there, the number didn't change. But the value, the stored labor, drained away into the ether. And you don't even have to go back that far. The book mentions the lost wallet example. If you lost a wallet in the year 2000 with £100 in it and you found it today, that money has lost about 50% of its purchasing power.
In just over 20 years.
In just over 20 years. Half your wealth gone. This is the invisible thief. We don't see someone breaking into our house, but the value is being siphoned off constantly every single day.
This brings me to the part of the book that literally made me stop and stare at the wall for a minute. The house versus gold comparison. Because we all complain about house prices. Oh, houses are so expensive now, I'll never get on the ladder. It's a national obsession.
This is perhaps the most crucial segment to understand, to deprogram yourself from the way we normally think about money. We measure house prices in pounds or dollars. And in 1970, the average UK house cost roughly £4,000. By 2020, that same average house costs roughly £240,000.
That is a massive, massive increase. It looks like a rocket ship taking off. A 60 times increase.
So we think, wow, houses have become 60 times more valuable. But Rob Dix says, stop measuring with a broken ruler. The pound is shrinking, so of course you need more of them to buy the house. Let's try measuring the house in something stable, something scarce. Let's measure it in gold.
What happens then when you do that?
When you price that same average UK house in ounces of gold, do you know what the chart looks like?
Tell us.
It's basically flat. The price in 2020 is almost exactly the same as it was in 1970.
Wait, pause. I want to make sure the listener and I really get this. You are saying the house didn't get more expensive.
In real terms, no. The house is the same house. It's a pile of bricks and timber. It requires roughly the same amount of labor relative to the rest of the economy. It hasn't become more valuable. What has happened is that the money we used to buy it has become almost worthless.
That is a total paradigm shift. It's like if you were trying to measure a room and your ruler kept shrinking every year. You'd say, wow, this room is getting huge. It used to be 10 feet, now it's 20 feet. But really, your foot-long ruler is now only 6 inches long.
That is the perfect analogy. The room isn't growing, the ruler is shrinking. And it's not just houses. The milk index in the book shows this too. A pint of milk went from 5 pence to 55 pence. Massive inflation, right? But priced in gold. Milk has actually gotten cheaper.
Which makes sense, right? I mean, because we have better technology now. Farming is more efficient.
Exactly. We have automated milking machines, better logistics, better refrigeration. Things should be getting cheaper. Technology is fundamentally deflationary. It drives costs down. The fact that prices are going up despite all this amazing technology just shows you how badly the currency is being debased. We are running up down escalator just to stand still.
So if money is losing value, we call that inflation. But most people, I think, just see inflation as prices going up. Like it's a weather event. Oh, it's raining today and prices are up.
It is portrayed that way. And politicians love that framing because it absolves them of responsibility. But we need to be very precise with our language here, just like the author is. The dictionary definition of inflation, the real economic definition, is a persistent rise in prices related to an increase in the volume of money.
Related to an increase in the volume of money. So it's not the prices that are the cause, they are the symptom. The cause is more money chasing the same amount of stuff.
Exactly. It's classic supply and demand. If I magically double the amount of money in everyone's pocket overnight, but we don't produce any more cars or houses or bread,
Mm.
the price of everything will just double. We aren't any richer. The numbers are just bigger.
But here's the thing that always confuses me. We're told that the government targets inflation. The Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, they all say we want 2% inflation. Why on earth would you want your citizens' money to lose value every year? Why is that the explicit goal?
This is where we get into the incentives of the system, and this is where you start to realize the game is rigged. Who is the biggest debtor in the economy? By a huge margin. Who owes the most money?
The government.
The government. They owe trillions. Now think about debt. If you owe £100 and inflation happens, wages go up, prices go up, all the numbers get bigger. That £100 debt stays fixed. It stays £100.
So it becomes easier and easier to pay off.
Exactly. Let's use a simple example. Imagine you borrow £100 from me today. And let's say you earn £10 an hour. You have to work 10 hours to pay me back.
Fair enough. Seems reasonable.
But let's say there is massive inflation over the next few years. Wages skyrocket. Now you earn £100 an hour. How long do you have to work to pay me back?
Just 1 hour. I've effectively stolen 9 hours of labor from you.
Correct. Inflation is a transfer of wealth from the lender, the person you save the money, to the borrower. And since the government is the biggest borrower in history, they need inflation. It's the only way they can manage their colossal debts. If the value of money stayed stable or even went up, their debts would become absolutely crushing.
So the 2% target isn't for our benefit at all. It's to keep their show on the road.
It is a slow-motion default. Instead of telling you, we can't pay you back, they pay you back in money that is worth less. It's cleaner, it's subtler, it's much harder to see, but it's still theft.
That is. Yeah, it's cynical, but it makes total logical sense when you look at the math. So how did we get here? Because surely it wasn't always this way.
No. For a very long time, money was tied to something physical, usually gold. The gold standard acted as a brake on the system. A king or a government couldn't just print money to fight a war or build a palace. They had to actually find gold or tax the people directly. It kept them honest, in a way.
But then came 1971. The book highlights this as the pivotal year, the Nixon shock. Set the scene for us. Why is 1971 the year the world changed forever?
Okay, so it's August 15th, 1971. The United States is struggling. They are spending an absolute fortune on the Vietnam War. At the same time, they're spending a fortune on domestic social programs, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. They call it guns and butter. They want both.
And they're printing dollars to pay for it all.
They are printing dollars like there's no tomorrow. But there's a problem. Under the Bretton Woods system, which was set up after World War II, the U.S. dollar was linked to gold. Other countries held dollars because they were promised they could swap them for gold at a fixed rate of $35 an ounce.
So the dollar was basically a receipt for gold, a claim check.
Exactly. But as the U.S. printed more and more of these paper claim checks, smart countries started doing the math. The French in particular, under Charles de Gaulle, looked at the huge pile of paper dollars floating around the world and then looked at the pile of gold in Fort Knox and realized, hang on, there's no way they have enough gold for all this paper.
So they called the bluff.
They did. France literally sent a battleship to New York Harbor to collect their gold. They wanted to cash out. The gold was flowing out of the U.S. vaults at an alarming rate. America was about to run out of gold.
So President Nixon had a choice to make.
He had two choices. Option A, stop spending, institute massive austerity, create a huge recession, tighten the belt, and save the gold standard. Option B, change the rules of the game.
And politicians don't like recessions, especially not ones they create themselves.
No, they don't. So he chose option B. He went on television on a Sunday night, interrupting the popular show Bonanza, and announced he was temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
Temporarily, that word is doing a lot of work there.
That was over 50 years ago. We are still waiting for that temporary suspension to end. That single moment severed the link between money and physical reality. We moved to a fiat system. Fiat means let it be done in Latin. It's money simply because the government says it is. It has no backing other than trust and military power.
And crucially, the brakes were off.
Completely off. If you look at the charts in Rob Dix's book and many others, the money supply graph looks like a hockey stick. It poodles along gently for decades, relatively stable, and then after 1971, boom, straight up, it goes vertical. They could create as much as they wanted, whatever they wanted, with no physical constraint.
Which leads us to the mechanics of it. Section 3. Because people talk about printing money, and I have this image in my head of a guy in a basement with a big printing press churning out 20-pound notes. But that's not really how it works now, is it?
No, and this is the biggest misconception people have. The magic money tree isn't usually the government printing physical cash. In fact, physical cash is a tiny, tiny percentage of the money supply. Most money today is digital. And it is created primarily by commercial banks.
Wait, hold on. This is important. So when I go to my high street bank for a mortgage, they aren't lending me Mrs. Jones's savings from down the street.
No, that is the story we are told in school, that banks are just intermediaries taking in savings and lending them out. But that is fundamentally false. When you sign that mortgage document for, say, £300,000, the bank does not check its vault. It does not transfer money from another customer's account. It simply types £300,000 into your bank account.
They just type it in, like editing a spreadsheet.
They create it out of thin air. The act of lending is the act of money creation. New debt equals new money. When you swipe your credit card, new money is created.
Yeah.
When a business takes out a loan to expand, new money is created.
That is wild. So every time someone takes out a loan, the total amount of money in the economy actually increases.
Yes. And conversely, when you pay back a loan, when you pay down your mortgage principal, that money is effectively destroyed. It vanishes back into the ether from whence it came.
Okay, so if banks can just type numbers into existence, why don't they just type infinite numbers? Why doesn't everyone get a billion-pound loan? What's the constraint?
Well, on a micro level, they need you to be able to pay it back, so they check your credit score and income. But the main macro constraint is the cost of borrowing, which is controlled by the central bank via the base rate. This is the big lever.
The famous base rate, we hear about this on the news all the time. The Bank of England raises rates to 5%. The Fed raises rates.
Think of the base rate as the price of creating money. If the central bank sets the rate low, say 0.1% like we had for years, it's incredibly cheap for commercial banks to borrow and lend. So people take out more mortgages, businesses take out more loans means more new money is created, the economy booms.
It puts the foot firmly on the gas pedal.
Right. But if they set the rate high,
borrowing becomes expensive. I can't afford the mortgage payments. The business decides not to expand. Fewer loans are taken out. Less money is created.
exactly, the economy slows down. That's the brake pedal.
But we've had historically low rates for a very long time, haven't we? Especially in the period after the 2008 crash.
We have. For over a decade, money was basically free to borrow. And that has led to an absolute explosion of borrowing, both public and private. We are now in what the book calls a debt trap. It describes this psychological shift. Your grandparents probably saved up for months or years to buy a sofa. They waited until they had the cash. Today, you put it on a credit card, you use Klarna, you get a car on a PCP finance deal. We have moved from a nation of savers to a nation of debtors.
And it's not just us as individuals, it's the government too.
Especially the government. They run a deficit almost every single year, meaning they spend more than they bring in through taxes. They bridge that gap by issuing bonds, which are basically IOUs. And here is the massive conflict of interest that Rob Dix points out so clearly. The government needs low interest rates to afford the interest payments on its own gigantic debt pile.
Ah, I see. Of course. If the national debt is trillions and interest rates go up to, say, 10%, the government would go bankrupt just paying the interest. They wouldn't have any money left for hospitals or schools.
Exactly. So they're permanently incentivized to keep interest rates lower than the rate of inflation. This is a deliberate policy called financial repression.
Walk us through the math of financial repression. How does that work for a saver?
Okay, so let's say the real rate of inflation is 5%. That means your cash is losing 5% of its value every year. But the central bank, to help the government, keeps the official interest rates at, say, 3%. If you are a saver, you are earning 3% in your savings account, but you're losing 5% to inflation. Your real return is minus 2%.
I am losing money by saving. It's a guaranteed loss.
You are, but the government. Their debt is being eroded by inflation at 5%, but they're only paying 3% in interest. They are winning. They are using the nation's savers to quietly bail out the state.
It's a hidden tax.
It is the most effective and insidious tax there is because nobody ever receives a bill for it. You just get poorer and you blame yourself.
This brings us to the modern era. Section 4, the crisis era.
The system seemed to be chugging along. more or less, until 2008. Then the wheels well and truly fell off. What happened?
2008 was a massive shock. It was a deflationary shock. The credit crunch. Banks were terrified to lend to anyone, even each other. They stopped lending. And remember, if banks stop lending,
Money stops being created.
even worse. As people and companies defaulted on their loans, money was actively being destroyed. The money supply was shrinking. This is an absolute nightmare for a government and an economy based on debt. In deflation, the value of money goes up, which means the real value of their debt goes up. It becomes harder to pay.
So they panicked.
They panicked. They couldn't just lower interest rates in the normal way because they were already near zero. They'd hit the floor. So they had to invent a new, much bigger tool, quantitative easing, or QE.
QE, the magic word. I hear this all the time and I just nod along, but what actually is it in simple terms? In simple terms, it's the central bank creating trillions of new pounds and dollars out of thin air and using that new money to buy government bonds and other assets from commercial banks and pension funds.
So they're injecting this newly created cash directly into the veins of the financial system.
Yes. The goal was to force cash into the system. By buying up all of the safe government bonds, they pushed the price of those bonds up, which means the interest rate or yield on them went down. This forced big investors, pension funds, insurance companies to go looking for better returns elsewhere. They had to take more risk. They poured that new money into the stock market. They poured it into property.
They wanted to create a wealth effect. That was the term they used, right?
Right. The theory was, if people's houses and their stock portfolios go up in value, they will feel richer and they will go out and spend money, and that spending will save the economy from depression.
And it sort of worked. It staved off disaster, at least.
It saved the banking system. It stopped the immediate collapse. But, and this is a huge but that the book emphasizes, it didn't cause high consumer inflation at the time. The price of a loaf of bread didn't skyrocket in 2010.
Why not? They printed trillions of dollars and pounds. Surely that has to cause inflation.
Because the money got stuck in the financial sector. It went from the central bank to the commercial banks. It went to wealthy asset owners. It didn't get into your pocket or my pocket. So asset prices, stocks, bonds, houses, fine art went to the moon. But wages for ordinary people stayed completely flat. It massively, massively increased wealth inequality.
The rich got richer because they owned the assets that were being inflated. The poor got nothing because they depend on wages, which weren't growing.
Exactly. It was a policy that explicitly favored the asset rich. But then came 2020, the pandemic. And this time it was different.
How so? What changed?
In 2020, the entire global economy shut down. The government needed to keep people afloat. This time, they didn't just give money to banks to buy bonds. They sent money directly to people. Stimulus checks in the U.S., furlough payments here in the U.K.
I remember I was sitting at home, not working, and the government was paying a huge chunk of my salary.
And where did that money come from? It wasn't tax revenue. The economy was closed. The Bank of England printed new money via QE, used it to buy newly issued government bonds, and the government took that brand new cash and put it straight into your bank account.
And because it went to regular people this time?
People spent it on Amazon, on takeaway food, on electronics. Suddenly you had a huge flood of new money chasing a shortage of goods because all the factories and supply chains were closed.
Boom. Inflation, real, undeniable, hurts when you go shopping inflation.
It was the ketchup bottle effect. You shake it for years, 2008, 2020, and nothing comes out, and then suddenly the entire contents come out all at once. And do you remember what the central bankers told us at first? They said it was transitory.
Yes, I remember that clearly. Don't worry, it's just a blip. It'll go away when the ports open back up.
The book argues this was either a deliberate lie or at least massive, massive wishful thinking. They couldn't admit they had finally broken the currency. But here is the paradox we are stuck in now, the trap. We have high inflation. The economic textbook says you must raise interest rates to kill inflation.
But if they raise interest rates too high, they crash the housing market, they crash the stock market, and they bankrupt the government because of its huge debt.
Bingo. They are completely and utterly trapped. They are addicted to cheap money. The economy literally cannot function without it anymore. We are walking a very narrow tightrope between out-of-control hyperinflation on one side and a deflationary depression on the other.
That sounds terrifying. It feels like we're in a car with no brakes, heading down a very steep hill.
It is a precarious situation. The system is incredibly fragile.
Okay, so the system is rigged. My savings are melting like an ice cube in the sun, and the government is trapped. If I just sit here and do nothing, I'm the fish in the water that's slowly being brought to a boil.
Yeah.
We need Section 5, the survival guide.
Let's pivot to empowerment. Rob Dix is not a doomer. He's an investor. He wrote this book to tell you how to play the game and win. He outlines 5 core principles. And I have to warn you, some of these go against everything your parents and grandparents taught you about money.
Let's go through them. Principle 1, forget about saving in cash.
This is a really hard one for people to swallow. We are taught cash is king, save for a rainy day. But in this environment of financial repression, cash is trash. If your bank pays you 4% interest, but real inflation is 8%, you are losing 4% of your wealth every single year. It's a guaranteed loss.
It's like trying to carry water in a sieve. It's leaking out constantly.
Exactly. You're guaranteed to get poorer. So Rob Dix advises keeping enough cash for immediate emergencies, maybe 3 to 6 months of expenses. But everything else, it has to be deployed. It cannot sit idle in the bank account.
Okay, that's a big one. Principle 2, take on debt responsibly.
Now, this sounds completely counterintuitive. Get into debt to survive. But remember the inflation dynamic we talked about earlier. If you borrow money at a fixed interest rate to buy an asset, like a house, inflation becomes your best friend. It eats away at the real value of the debt over time.
So if I have a £200,000 mortgage and we have 10% inflation for 5 years,
The real burden of that mortgage drops dramatically. You are paying the bank back with money that is worth far less than the money you originally borrowed. You're essentially doing what the government is doing. You're shorting the currency.
but there's a massive, massive caveat here, the word responsibly.
A huge caveat. This is crucial. Do not borrow money to buy holidays, expensive cars, or clothes. That is bad debt. That just makes you poorer. You borrow to buy assets that will rise in value with inflation, and you must ensure you can afford the payments, even if interest rates rise. You don't want to get margin called on your life.
Got it. Align yourself with the house, not against it. Principle 3, be wary of fixed income.
Fixed income usually means bonds. People think of them as safe. But if you buy a bond that pays you a fixed £50 a year for 20 years and inflation skyrockets, that £50 soon buys you nothing. A cup of coffee. Bonds have been a terrible place to be during high inflation periods throughout history. The book calls them certificates of confiscation.
So avoid the traditional safe investments because in this new world, they aren't safe anymore. Principle 4, invest in real assets.
This goes right back to the house versus gold chart we discussed. Real assets are things you can touch, things with scarcity, property, gold and other precious metals, commodities, maybe even fine art or rare whiskey.
Why do they work so well in this environment?
Because they can't be printed. They have intrinsic scarcity. When the currency is debased and there's more and more of it, the price of real stuff tends to rise to compensate. They act as a raft in the flood of new money. If the value of the pound halves, the price of an ounce of gold, in pounds, should roughly double. Your purchasing power is preserved.
And finally, principle 5, invest in the stock market. Boringly.
I love that he adds the word boringly. This is not about trying to pick the next Tesla or Nvidia. You will probably lose if you try that.
So what do we do instead?
You buy the whole market. You buy low-cost index funds. You are owning a tiny slice of the entire productive economy. Companies have a natural hedge against inflation because if their costs go up, wages, raw materials, what do? They raise their prices. So their profits, in nominal terms, tend to go up with inflation.
So own a bit of everything, don't gamble, just ride the overall economic wave.
Exactly. It's about participation. You have to be in the game to win. Sitting on the sidelines in cash is a losing strategy.
Now, in the afterword, Rob talks about some crucial mindset shifts. And there is one that really, really stuck out to me. Think real, not nominal.
This is the superpower. This is the key to seeing the matrix. Stop looking at the price tag. Stop looking at the number in your bank balance. Start looking at buying power.
Can you give us a practical example of that?
Sure. Let's say your house goes up in price by 10% in a year. You feel rich. You tell your friends, I made money on my house. But if inflation was also 10% that year, you didn't make anything. Your house buys the exact same amount of bread, milk, and holidays as it did last year. You just ran to stand still.
But if your house price stays flat, goes up 0%, and inflation is 10%, you've actually lost a huge amount of wealth in real terms.
Correct. Once you start seeing the world in real terms, the illusion just falls away. You stop chasing the number and you start chasing the value. You realize that a pay rise that just matches inflation isn't a raise at all. It's just preventing a pay cut.
He also mentions, very pointedly, don't rely on the government.
This is harsh, but I think it's true. The government is like that friend who borrows money and never quite pays it back. They are looking out for their own survival, which means managing their debt pile. They are not looking out for your savings. If push comes to shove, and the choice is between high inflation, which hurts you, or government bankruptcy, which hurts them, they will choose inflation every single time. You have to build your own lifeboat. No one has come to save you.
That is a real wake-up call. And finally, his last point, provide value.
This is the most optimistic and I think the most fundamental point. No matter what happens to the currency, whether we go back to gold, stick with fiat, or move to Bitcoin, the one thing that guarantees your survival is your ability to do something useful for other human beings. Money is just a medium of exchange for value. If you can create value, you will always be able to trade for what you need to live.
That is a great grounding thought. The currency might be fake, but the work is real.
Exactly. Your skills are the ultimate store of value.
So let's bring this all home. We started with the fish in water. We've swum through the history of gold, the 1971 shock, the magic money tree of the commercial banks, and the inflation traps of 2020.
We've gone from swapping carrots for haircuts to a system of digital money printing that funds entire economies and global wars.
It's been quite a journey, and the big takeaway for me is that we are living in a massive experiment.
We are. This fiat money experiment is only about 50 years old. In the grand scheme of human history, that is the blink of an eye. It feels stable because it's all we've ever known, but Rob Dix argues we are likely closer to the end of this particular era than the beginning.
The cracks are definitely showing. The volatility is increasing. The numbers are getting crazier.
It is. But, and this is the so what of the whole deep dive, knowledge is power. If you know the rules of this strange game that cash rots, that real assets float, and that the system is designed to inflate away debt, you can position yourself to win, or at the very least not to drown.
Stop being the fish. Start seeing the water.
And learn how to swim.
I love that. And for anyone who wants to see the specific charts we talked about, that house versus gold chart is truly shocking. You really should pick up The Price of Money by Rob Dix. It is a genuine eye-opener.
Absolutely. It clarifies the chaos wonderfully.
Here is my final thought for you to chew on, listener. We talked a lot about money losing value, but think about your own time. You trade your time, your life, for money. If the money you hold is leaking value every single day, it means the time you spent earning it is being retroactively erased.
That's a profound way to put it.
So the question isn't just, how do I invest my money? The real question is, how do I stop my life's work from evaporating? And I think that answer starts with owning things that cannot be printed.
Real things.
Real things. Thanks for diving deep with us today. Don't let the invisible thief take any more than he already has. We will see you next time.